What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and a lot happened in the football world over the weekend, and we are here to break it all down today with my top 10 lessons learned and takeaways, where I give you my favorite data, usage, stats, the rookie receiver report, everything you could possibly need so that you're not scrolling through ESPN or box scores and taking hours out of your day, but instead we break it all down here with everything you need to know heading into week 3 of the fantasy football season. As always, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're new. And the first takeaway we have today is the rookie receiver report, of course, sponsored and brought to you by Underdog. As always, use promo code RON, and when you sign up on Underdog and you play $5, they will give you $50 in bonus funds along with a gimme pick in the Pick'em lobby for every new customer out there that uses promo code RON. I will have a link in the description and the comment section down below. We will be drafting teams as soon as the resurrection is live, which is where they do a fantasy football draft format from weeks 4 on, and those are always fun to stream and just kind of see what are these new prices. And one of the more fun things to look at is the prices on the rookie receivers. This is every rookie receiver, wide receiver, or tight end from the 2025 class with 14 or more routes run. Big emphasis on 14, all right? It's week 2. This sample is still super, super small. Like, it's so small. It is 2 little dots across a 17-game sample that we are expecting here. But let's talk about our takeaways, and we'll go kind of from the top down here. First of all, you have Isaac Tesla. Now, what you're looking at on this screen, you have their, of course, their name, their position, their week 1 route percentage. So in terms of routes divided by pass plays, how often are they on the field? We want like 90% plus. That is every down starting receiver territory that you can put into your fantasy football lineup. Targets per route run, how much volume are you accruing on a per route basis? Anything over 20% is elite. Yards per route run, how efficient are you on a per route basis? Anything over 2 yards per route run is elite. First downs per route run. Are you not only making big plays and being efficient on your targets or on your routes, but are you moving the chains and contributing to your offense? That is going to be 10% or better is an elite number. And then PFF grade. How do you look on film? Anything over 80 is a really nice grade. And this just gives us an entire picture of how much playing time is this rookie receiver getting? How much volume are they getting? How efficient are they? Are they moving the chains? And do they look good on film? To give us kind of how does this rookie receiver look at this point in the season. And we'll start with Isaac Tesla. He is the reason why I have this set at a weird number of 14 plus routes. I imagine people want to hear about him. He's a very cool story. We loved him during Dynasty season. We had Matt Harmon on, who kind of sold me on Isaac Tesla. Huge hands, combine stud, day 2 draft capital for the Lions. But I would just pump the brakes, all right? The per route stuff looks good, right? 3 yards per route run is amazing. 14.3% first downs per route run is amazing. But that also is the same number as his targets per route run. So he has definitely converted both of his targets into first downs, one of them a touchdown, both of them one-handers that looked amazing. But also he has 2 targets, 2 catches, and a 38% route share in this game. Now, 38% up from 7% is really nice, but you do have to remember that this was a crazy blowout. It was like 50-20 was somewhere around where the final score ended up in terms of the Bears versus the Lions. So Tesla is really a long-term stash until you can get to like 80% plus of the routes. But I don't think that it's that crazy to think that he could leapfrog Khalif Raymond on the depth chart, but it's just a matter of when, not if, for Isaac Tesla. Purely a stash at this point. Then we can talk about Tyler Warren here, who has just been an absolute monster. Back-to-back games of 70-plus receiving yards to start his career. He is the best rookie receiver on this chart at this point. He leads everybody in first downs per route run. He leads everybody in, like, everybody not named Isaac Tesla. He leads everybody not named Isaac Tesla in targets per route run, yards per route run, first downs per route run, PFF grade, and he's doing it as a tight end. Michael Pittman is no joke. Josh Downs is no joke. It's not like he's the only receiving option there. He's just been that good. He is, to me, somewhere between rookie Sam Laporta and Brock Bowers, 2 of the best rookie tight end seasons we've ever seen. Tyler Warren is everything that he has been talked up to be. He is my tight end 3 in Dynasty. He's even I probably prefer him to Kittle at this point rest of season just with Kittle's injury as like a locked and loaded, set and forget top 3 tight end right now. That's just genuinely what it is. And he hasn't even scored a touchdown yet. Like we haven't even really seen what his peak like spike week looks like when he truly goes off in a given week, but he just looks amazing. Also, note 73% of the routes up from, or 84% of the routes up from 73% because this was an actual competitive game, not where the Dolphins just laid over like they did in week 1. Then you have Ted McMillan. This is as advertised. He hits nearly every benchmark, 20% plus targets per out run, just below 2 yards per out run, 10% plus first downs per out run, 75 plus PFF grade. He is everything you could possibly hope for. 6 catches, 100 yards in this game versus the Cardinals. 19 targets through 2 weeks is amazing volume. He is the wide receiver 17 right now in PPR points, and that's with 0 touchdowns. So this is as good as you could ask for. Wide receiver 2 production without fluky touchdowns. He's earning every rep. He has a highlight catch in both games. I'm very, very impressed with Tedero McMillan. Then we'll go one down here to, of course, Egbuka is going to be playing Monday Night Football, so we don't talk about him. Alec Manor. And this is somebody that I was begging you guys to add on the waiver wire show last week as somebody with a lot of room to grow. Now, I don't want to pat myself on the back too crazy because 82% of the routes down to 68%. That is the bad this week for Manor. It came at the expense of Manor in favor of like Chimere Dike, who we'll talk about. I think Van Jefferson also got put more in the rotation. I assume this is kind of Callahan just like throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. But we know with these rookies and really just players in general is that your talent earns the opportunity later. And Manor proved that this week. 6 targets, 4 catches, 56 yards, a touchdown. All of that is really, really good. Per route metrics at this point, 23.2% targets per out run is really impressive. 8.9% first downs per out run on a team that's probably not getting a lot of first downs on the Titans is huge. 1.23 yards per out run isn't amazing, but it's a huge step up from last week when he really didn't give you anything there. So Manor, I am really, really impressed with. If there's going to be a day 3 receiver that pops down the stretch, it's Manor. Now, I'm not throwing him in lineups at this point, right? 68% of the routes isn't going to cut it, but if he can get to 90% plus of the routes and be like the true compliment to Calvin Ridley in this offense. Cam Ward looks like a guy as well. Like the touchdown pass to Alec Manor was one of the craziest like debut touchdowns from a rookie quarterback ever. I think that there are better days ahead for the Titans. Really brutal matchup versus the Broncos and then the Rams in the first 2 weeks. Manor is one of the bright spots along with Cam Ward. Then we'll talk about Harold Fanon Jr. here. More of the same. You hate to see his route share stay exactly at 65%, but it's better than it coming down like Isaiah Likely last year, right? Where he just like reverts back to a number 2 tight end. At least now we know what his role looks like, but we really do want it to be 75% or more of the routes from to have an every down, every game, like locked and loaded style role. But he is still the tight end 7 on the year. His per out metrics look great, right? Over a 20% targets per out run, 1.73 yards per out run for a tight end is more than fine. I want to say Laporta's rookie year was somewhere in the 1.7 to 1.8 range, so that's absolutely fine. 7.8% first downs per out run, that's fine. Really, my biggest concern at this point is the quarterback play for the Browns. We already had Joe Flacco getting sat, and if we need Dylan Gabriel in at quarterback or Shedeur Sanders, things get really ugly there. But there's a good chance they just continue to roll with Joe Flacco, and they sat him because the game got out of reach. So we'll see how that goes. Now, let's go down this list, sadly, to Travis Hunter. And this one's tough. In a season where I have felt pretty good, right? We've drafted plenty of Tedero McMillan, plenty of Emeka Egbuka. Travis Hunter's maybe our most drafted wide receiver. Actually, he's it's him or Luther Burden, which both haven't looked great so far. But with Travis Hunter, here's what I'll say. And I imagine a lot of you guys out there that have been following the channel and the videos also drafted Travis Hunter. I wouldn't full-on panic yet. And here's why. He goes from 82% of the routes to 60%. He's still getting featured in this offense. 25.9% targets per out run is good, but I will say it's 6.5 yard ADOT so far. So it's very much manufactured design touches, which isn't a bad thing, but you can't build the whole plane out of manufactured stuff. You want the easy button stuff, right? That's what we're begging for with like a Marvin Harrison Jr. is can he get some designed usage? That's what Hunter's getting, but he's almost more like Wan'Dale Robinson, Cole Beasley type beat, which isn't what you want. Like you want some of that stuff, but you also want the big boy routes. And it's just a bit of a conundrum right now where if he's going to play so much on defense like he did this week, which we're going to have to speculate every week, is it because, okay, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins was there, they're going to need Travis Hunter on that side of the ball? Can he ramp up to a spot where he still plays those defensive snaps, but he can also run 80% plus of the routes? We'll kind of see with Travis Hunter. A lot is up in the air, and I think it's going to take a lot of patience at this point where we thought maybe he'd hit the ground running a little better than this. It also doesn't help that Trevor Lawrence just hasn't really connected with any of his top receivers like Brian Thomas or Travis Hunter at this point. But here's kind of the numbers on the day for Travis Hunter. He ran 27 routes of 45 Trevor Lawrence dropbacks. That's not going to cut it. And then he played 43 of 69 defensive snaps, which is a lot of defense, a lot more than last week when I want to say he ran like maybe only 6 snaps on defense. This is what Hayden Wink said. I don't know how the Jaguars are getting value on Travis Hunter if they use him like Cole Beasley on offense and an undersized cornerback 2 on defense. Reps on both sides of the ball where his size is a limiter so far, hoping they find a better balance. So, I don't know. I wouldn't call him a bust at this point. Like, it's literally 2 games. I think he's still going to hit his stride. He, at the very least, is a difference-making wide receiver. Just the real issue I see is that all of his usage has been designed and in the slot, and I think it's going to be tough for him to graduate to outside wide receiver with downfield routes if he's splitting all of his practice reps between defense and receiver. So, again, I think it just takes patience. I think he gets downgraded to like kind of a wide receiver 3 flex option, sort of in the similar mold of like where you feel about Josh Downs right now or how you feel about Jaden Reed before he was hurt or how you feel currently about Matthew Golden, who we'll talk about in a second here, as guys that you can flex, but you would prefer not to until we see some more positive stuff out of them. I'm at least not concerned about Travis Hunter from a talent standpoint, but usage is definitely an issue moving forward. And it does suck because week 1, 82% of the routes was absolutely fine, but we're going to need 80% plus on a weekly basis. So we'll kind of see how things go. The Jaguars do lose this game. I have to assume that they are going to kind of get the ship back steady, sort of figure out what they want to do with Travis Hunter moving forward, and just kind of see what their vision is for this offense in general in terms of the Jaguars. Then we can talk about Matthew Golden. Similar idea, at least for him, he's not getting used on defense. He goes from 57% of the routes to 68% of the routes. Really, the big positive for him is the Jaden Reed injury means that he should be getting up to 80% plus of the routes as soon as week 3, which is massive for Matthew Golden. But really the issue is that through 2 weeks, all he has right now is 4 targets, 2 catches, and 16 yards. Per route, he has given you nothing, 0.44 yards per route run. So the injury should free up the routes. He should get on the field, but he has not proved that he can really do anything when on the field, which is a concern, but also we're talking about a very small sample at this point. So things can absolutely turn for him in terms of yards per route run, targets per route run, all of that. He just needs to get on the field. He did have, I don't know, he like got open a few times. He had like a what could have been kind of a bomb down the field get overthrown by Jordan Love. A couple of near misses, but if you can get a wide receiver in this offense running 80% or more of the routes, they're going to score enough points that I think that Matthew Golden should be all right in the long run. And then we can talk about the 2 Bears across the bottom here with Luther Burden and Colston Loveland. I'm not super concerned about their per route metrics at this point. Luther Burden, purely a gadget guy, 20% targets per route run, but a 0.13 yards per route run. That's just what it is. They're throwing him screens when he does get the ball. His route percentage goes from 23% down to 12%. I think that really only happened because DJ Moore got banged up in week 1, which has led to more routes for Luther Burden. Anyways, this is an 0-2 team. Colston Loveland is behind Cole Kmet. Luther Burden is behind Olamide Zaccheaus. The hope is that at 0-2, they're going to keep losing or they're going to keep struggling, and then eventually they're going to look to their young players that they invested all of this draft capital in and then give you players that you can start somewhere around the middle of the season, somewhere around that rookie buy bump that we are accustomed to seeing. I'm still holding on to both. I'm not dropping either of them, Luther Burden or Colston Loveland. Then we can talk about Torrey Horton here. Sadly goes from 65% of the routes down to 51% of the routes, despite catching a touchdown. He's purely a stash for now, but you do like to see him producing, right? He gave you 4 targets, 2 catches, 32 yards, and a touchdown. That's better than nothing. So he is a stash that has upside, but you do hate to see his route percentage go down. Then we have just kind of a mixed bag. We will talk about Gunnar Helm over in this area here. Gunnar Helm was a fun tight end out of Texas. He should have been a day 2 pick, but he falls in the draft with a bad combine, whether he was banged up or kind of how that worked out. But seeing his routes go from 18% to 34%, and then for a day 3 tight end, 20% targets per out run, 1.25 yards per out run, 5% first downs per out run, really not bad at all. He is absolutely a stash in Dynasty. Arian Smith on my Jets, who I am not a fan of. He did make one good catch for a first down that was impressive in this game. Outside of that, he was a no-show. He gave you 1 catch for 8 yards. That one catch was nice, but outside of that, we're talking 0.36 yards per out run. But with Xavier Gibson cut, he's going to have every opportunity to show that he is an NFL wide receiver in a receiver room that after Garrett Wilson is Tyler Johnson, it is Josh Reynolds, it is Allen Lazard. So it is wide open for Arian Smith to be a real difference maker. And they also gave him the end around went for like minus 13 yards, but they did scheme him up a touch. So Arian Smith showing like a very light pulse, like nothing crazy, but a light pulse that he could be a guy. Like he's at least not Malachi Corley, healthy scratch, fumbling, all of that. He's at least in the mix as a piece of this offense. Then we'll talk about Chimere Dike. The good for him, he gets a 71-yard kick return, which when we're talking about day 3 receivers, that's a big deal. He saw a jump in routes, right? He goes from 15% to 41%. He gets 5 targets on the day. The issue is that he only had -1 receiving yards on those 5 targets. He's a deep dynasty stash at this point. Selfishly, I would love if these Chimere Dike routes could not come at the expense of Io Manor like they did this week, right? Going from 82% to 68%, with DK going from 15% to 41%. We'll see how that goes moving forward. He's purely a dynasty guy at this point, Chimere Dike, but it is worth noting that he is getting playing time and eating into Io Manor's role. Elijah Arroyo towards the bottom here. Nothing really to note, but I did check AJ Barner, their starting tight end. His route percentage didn't decrease. Of course, Torrey Horton's decreases. So this tells me that Elijah Arroyo is playing some like hybrid wide receiver and is actually eating into Torrey Horton's routes. So something to note moving forward. Mason Taylor, tight end for the Jets across the bottom here. His routes go from 84% to 71%, and he's still an absolute zero. 7% targets per out run is the worst on the entire list. Nothing to really show for here. And he's got to show something before he completely gets relegated by like Jeremy Ruckert at this point. So Mason Taylor, we got to see some more. Jalen Lane, this one's interesting. He doesn't really do anything, but his route share goes from 32% to 52%. And then they clearly like this kid. Now, this is a crazy decision. It was for the game, 4th down versus the Packers in a primetime game. And they go for a one-on-one slant against Jalen Lane with, I believe, like Debo McLaurin on the other side of the formation. It was crazy. It was like game on the line. This is our last breath to even try and win this game. Press the Jalen Lane button, which I think is a positive for him. But like, he also hasn't really converted on his opportunities. And then we'll also talk about Isaiah Bond across the bottom. Worst PFF grade on the list, or worst PFF grade on the list. Really nothing to show for. He goes from 23% to 39% of the routes, but I'm not really juiced about Isaiah Bond in any fashion here. Now let's get away from the rookie receiver report onto our takeaways from the week. Our second takeaway being the Joe Burrow injury. This was by far the most requested thing that people wanted me to talk about here. With Joe Burrow, he will need toe surgery that will sideline him a minimum of 3 months. And the question becomes, now what? What happens to our fantasy teams that drafted Jamar Chase 101, or Chase Brown at the 2-3 turn, or T. Higgins in the 3rd round? Here's what I'll say. The sky is not falling is my take. I don't think that Jake Browning is a death sentence, but I also don't think that it's amazing. Like, I would call Jake Brown a downgrade, or Jake Browning a downgrade, but not a death sentence, is what I say here in this tweet. If we go back to 2023, the last time Joe Burrow got an injury and was out for the year, we saw Jake Browning in 7 starts. In those 7 starts, he had about 267 passing yards per game, 6th in the NFL, 11 touchdowns to 7 picks, not terrible. That's like over 1 touchdown per game, about 1 interception per game. And Cincinnati was 13th in EPA per play, which is just offensive efficiency. That's pretty good. They are in the top 10 for passing yardage and then inside of the top 15 for offensive efficiency. That'll absolutely play, but of course you're coming down from Burrow leading the league in passing yards per game and the Bengals being a top 8 offense in offensive efficiency. Now, when we look at individual player production in 2023, Ja'Marr Chase since 2023 averages 22.3 points per game with Joe Burrow, 11.7 points per game with Jake Browning. T. Higgins goes from 16.1 points per game with Burrow to 13.2. Now, this was the interesting one. Of course, Chase Brown wasn't around in 2023. He was like a rookie in 2023. But Joe Mixon went from 13.3 points per game in that 2023 season to 18.5 points per game. So now I will say, I'm not going to say that you should boost up Chase Brown, but maybe Chase Brown is actually going to be somebody that's just fine, right? Like, it's still going to be a very similar structure of the offense. Will probably be more rush attempts to go around as well. And kind of my expectations for these guys would be that I don't think that Ja'Marr Chase goes down to 12 points per game like he did in 2023. I'd expect he goes from 20 to 22 down to 16 to 17 as a fringe wide receiver 1. T. Higgins probably goes to fringe wide receiver 2 in that 13 point per game range. And then I assume that Chase Brown is still a mid to back end RB1. So if I'm just spitballing rest of season rankings, I'd probably have Ja'Marr Chase around wide receiver 10 to 14. I'd probably have T. Higgins somewhere the wide receiver 25 to 30s. I'd probably have Chase Brown somewhere around RB 8 to 13. So it's not the end of the world is what I'm trying to say, but I will also say that if anyone out there is well, Ja'Marr Chase just had 2 touchdowns and put up a 35 bomb with Jake Browning, he's going to be absolutely fine, and you can get out of Ja'Marr Chase for CeeDee Lamb or Jahmyr Gibbs or Bijan Robinson or Saquon Barkley or anybody drafted in the top 6, Christian McCaffrey, I would do it in a heartbeat, but I don't think that those offers are on the table. Now, I will say on the other side of this game, right, it was Jaguars versus the Bengals. We talked about Travis Hunter at the top. Let's talk about Brian Thomas Jr., who I assume was another huge panic guy, right? We're going to have these panic meter shows after this week, and there's going to be a lot of Brian Thomas Jr. talk. Here's what I'll say about Brian Thomas Jr. 24% target share and 29% target share over his last 2 weeks from J.J. Zacharyson here. In week 2 from Jacob Gibbs, 91% of the routes, 12 targets, 166 air yards. All of that is really strong usage. He was too talented as a rookie from everything, from points per game production, having a top 10 season since Randy Moss in 1998 in terms of points per game, having the best yards per out run across all rookie receivers last year in a class with Malik Neighbors and Ladd McConkey and Brock Bowers. I just refuse to believe he doesn't know how to play football anymore. That's really the only reason to get 12 targets and only 4 catches. He had some really ugly drops, some afraid to catch balls over the middle. I just assume that this is just going to be a really ugly blemish on Brian Thomas's season, but I can't imagine a world where he doesn't bounce back to being a back end wide receiver 1, high end wide receiver 2 like you drafted him to be. The Jaguars' offense has actually been 12th in EPA per play at this point, 8th in scoring average at 26.5 points per game. So that is a plus. Of course, it was against Cincinnati and Carolina, but it is a plus that this offense at least looks functional with explosive plays as well. A lot of it coming from the run game, to be honest, but Liam Cohen does look as advertised at this point. They just need this to not be the case, right, with this underdog graphic down here with Diami Brown as your leading receiver, then Brenton Strange, then Parker Washington, then Brian Thomas, then Travis Hunter. That is not how they drew it up, and I assume once we get to week 17, 18, it looks a lot more like Brian Thomas, Travis Hunter, than your Diami Browns and everybody else. I think that that's going to get corrected as Liam Cohen finds his footing in this offense, in this scheme, along with Brian Thomas Jr. and everything really in between moving forward. Again, I think it is a positive bright spot that even while the passing game isn't clicking, this has still been a good offense through 2 weeks. Now, our third takeaway is going to be, oh my God, I didn't mean to have this up the entire time, but our third takeaway is the rookie running back carousel. And we'll start with the Jaguars, which is why we didn't start with or really mention Basil Tutin here, is Tank Bigsby gets traded to the Eagles, and it's essentially wheels all the way up for Travis Etienne and Basil Tutin heading into this week. And that's what we saw. I will give Travis Etienne his flowers. This isn't going to be, Tutin is not going to beat Etienne straight up if this is how Etienne is going to play. Gibbs outlines it here. 66% of the routes, 66% of the snaps, but 61% of the routes is amazing. 60% plus of the routes for Travis Etienne is a massive W. 18.7 PPR points, 14 of 25 running back rush attempts, 6 red zone touches on 11 Jacksonville red zone plays. Etienne is a locked and loaded RB2 moving forward, as like get him in your lineup almost no matter what is the matchup, anything like that. As long as he has this role, he's going to eat here. But huge upgrade for Tootin as well, where he goes from this like RB3 behind Tank Bigsby that has like Kamani Vidal in his range of outcomes. It's just like a day 3 running back that never hits anything, to getting 10 opportunities to Travis Etienne's 17 opportunities. And Tootin gave you 8 carries for 42 rushing, which is pretty strong. And then also 2 receptions for 32 yards and a touchdown. I believe that the long touchdown was a screen. So he's getting like design touches. He's making big plays. And that's all you can ask for. Maybe he carves out a role where as like a desperation RB2 and a hero RB build, you can throw him in there if you have bye week or injury struggles. But he's also, to me, maybe one of the most valuable handcuffs at this point. Because if Etienne goes down, it becomes literally just Tootin and LaQuint Allen in this offense. I think Tootin would get really like an 80-20 sort of split there if Tootin was to rise to the occasion. Then we also have the Giants backfield with Cam Scatabo. And this was a takeover I didn't see happening this quick, but Scatabo is firmly in the driver's seat at this point. He gets 14.9 weighted opportunities to Tyrone Tracy's 9.9. Scatabo gets a 51% snap share and a 69% running back rush share from Gibbs here. In the red zone, 75% of the snaps, 5 of 5 running back rush attempts. He gets 100% of the rush attempts inside of the 5-yard line. That's massive. That was the hope with Scatabo. Can he get the receiving role and the goal line role? He already has the goal line role on lock here. And on top of that, he looked really good running the ball across the bottom with Adam Carter, the second best rushing grade of week 2. And in the second half as well, in that top tweet, he had 10.2 weighted opportunities in the second half to Tracy's 3.5. It seemed like as the game went on and it became crunch time, they wanted to lean on Cam Scatabo. So moving forward at this point, it's Scatabo over Tracy in all formats, whether that is weekly rankings, rest of season rankings, dynasty rankings. It is Scatabo over Tracy already. Tracy gets a huge downgrade to somebody that you can't really trust in your lineup moving forward if Scatabo is now the lead back. Then we'll talk about the Browns rookies in Judkins and Dylan Sampson here. Judkins, of course, kind of overtakes Sampson for the likelihood to be the lead back here rest of season. Now, of course, Jerome Ford leads this backfield in snaps with 48% when it comes down to the snaps with Joe Flacco before it became garbage time. You had 48% for Ford, 26% for Judkins, 25% for Sampson here from Dave Richard. Then Dwayne McFarland points out here that Judkins leads the team in rush attempts. He had 25% of the snaps, 48% of the attempts, 16% of the routes, 7% of the targets. Essentially what you're hoping for now is that you can't really start Judkins or Sampson in week 3 or in the near term, but Judkins is now the odds-on favorite to be the lead back here and be the fantasy stud from middle to late season in fantasy football. Really what it comes down to is how long Kevin Stefanski is going to remain stubborn on this Jerome Ford usage. Can we get a 60-40 split between Judkins and Sampson and kind of make everybody happy? Then we'll move on to the Denver Broncos backfield with RJ Harvey. This one's tough. Last week he rips off a big play. This week he gives you 5 carries for 8 yards. Really not good when J.K. Dobbins goes for 14 carries for 76 yards and a touchdown. So RJ Harvey stays stagnant at 31% of the snaps. This is from the utilization report over on Fantasy Life. And for now, RJ Harvey is just an RB3 or flex play that if you just have no other options, you hope that he rips off a long run and scores a touchdown. But we're going to need him to make progress over J.K. Dobbins at this point, making him an early season tough start. But he is still a rookie running back, and a lot of things can change, as we saw with Scatabo this week. And also, with a guy we'll talk about later in Kenneth Walker, is things are very fluid during the season. You can always earn your role. Players go down with injury all the time. RJ Harvey will have his opportunities to kind of make way on this backfield split, but for now, it is firmly J.K. Dobbins. Then we'll talk about Caleb Johnson, which I'm not even going to show a graphic for. Caleb Johnson goes from 4% of the snaps in week 1 to 3% of the snaps in week 2. And he cost, I don't know if I would say that it costed his team the game, but it absolutely did not help. Kickoff return goes through his hands, then he's just like, all right, I'm going to let it go into the end zone, and it's going to get called a touchback. It's not get called a touchback. The Seahawks fall on it, and it's a touchdown for the Seahawks for free. I have to assume that Mike Tomlin's doghouse is quite large, and open for service when it comes to Caleb Johnson. So he's tough. Caleb Johnson now kind of becomes what Basil Tutin was preseason, where if we were drafting today, Caleb Johnson for me would be like a 12th round pick, RB3 on his depth chart that you're hoping pops down the stretch of the season. But it's looking ugly. I will say positive for Jaylen Warren that Caleb Johnson keeps burying himself, and then also Jaylen Warren is making some headway over Kenneth Gainwell, going from 46% of the snaps in week 1 to 58% in week 2 over Kenneth Gainwell. And if Jaylen Warren can keep kind of separating himself from both of these backs, he will become a better and better start as the season goes on. And then our last rookie running back here to catch up with is TreVeyon Henderson. Same deal with RJ Harvey. He gets downgraded to RB3 / flex territory as a guy that you're not really trying to start early on. He goes from 34% of the snaps down to 29%. I'd say that means he really just kind of stalled in terms of his role growing. And the issue for him is he got 3 holding penalties. In pass protection, he let up a sack as well, which is really bad for him. This is somebody who came into the NFL where his calling card was pass protection. And if that's now in jeopardy, then his route potential, his pass catching potential, his potential of like really carving out a real role in this offense takes a hit. I will say it's only week 2. Rookies, we draft them for what they can do down the stretch after their bye week, in the middle of the season, in the late season. I am not fully panicking on TreVeyon Henderson yet. It is just that if you drafted him in the 3rd round with the hopes to start him in your lineup, those days are now a lot less bright. So in the meantime, if maybe you drafted a guy like Etienne off the bench or even a J.K. Dobbins, we talked about RJ Harvey, these are now guys you can start ahead of TreVeyon Henderson and feel good about it moving forward. Talking about that Patriots game, our 4th takeaway is Drake Maye's designed rushing. This is absolutely huge for Drake Maye because his biggest superpower last year was his legs. Drake Maye is really, really good on the ground, and we didn't see that in week 1. In week 1, all he had was 4 carries for 11 yards. In this one, he gets 10 carries for 31 yards and a rushing touchdown. He goes from 1 designed rush attempt in week 1, which is not good. Designed rush attempt just means not a scramble. It's just like some kind of zone read or a QB power, something like that, which is what you want to see for guys like this. That's what Josh Allen will do, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, all of the above. But instead, this week, he gets not only 10 attempts, 3 of them are designed attempts, which is huge. That's tied for the 2nd most in week 2 behind only Jalen Hurts. So that is real, okay, we're going to let things loose here and let him actually use his wheels to his advantage. That also means that 7 of those carries were scrambles as well. So in total, this is what we want to see from Drake Maye. Moving forward, he is a top 12 start if we can pencil him in for like 5 to 10 rush attempts in most games. Then we'll talk about the receivers here on this Patriots team. You can't really trust any of them in your lineup at this point. This is from the utilization report. You can see here, Booty goes from 83% of the routes to 74%. Diggs goes from 70% of the routes to 58%. So Diggs is brutal, man. He was not somebody that I was drafting. He is somebody people were drafting, but he's 30-plus years old, coming off an ACL tear, and he's still working back from that. He's still not 100%. I mean, you'll take 23% target share. That's not bad at all, but you're going to need that route share to not decrease. You're going to need it to get to like 90% plus for him to be an every week starter. And for now, he's somebody that in like week 3 wide receiver rankings will be like wide receiver 45 for me. It's like a desperation flex piece. Same deal with Boutte. 74% of the routes is not going to cut it. They really rotated this receiver room as well, with Pop Douglas going from 74% to 35%. I will say, you can fact check me. I don't know if Pop Douglas got hurt, but if he didn't get hurt, cutting his routes from 74% to 35% is pretty crazy. Now, our 5th takeaway here is some other messy backfields, starting with Seattle. Kenneth Walker was the biggest panic on this guy week 1 candidate of all time. And he comes out instead and gives you a real counterpunch here in week 2, where he just completely outproduces Zach Charbonnet in week 2 against the Steelers, who I guess the Steelers defense isn't really as good as advertised. Like, the Jets looked amazing against them, and then the Bills completely shut them out. But we have some tweets here. One from Ryan Heath. Zach Charbonnet out-touched Kenneth Walker 15-14, but Walker outgains him 118 scrimmage yards to Charbonnet's 10. And he'd love the victory lap, but the issue is that Charbonnet did have the only touch inside the 10-yard line and now has 4 of 5 on the season. Now, in terms of their rushing over the entire season, Charbonnet with a 2.1 yards per carry by underdog, Kenneth Walker with a 5.4 yards per carry, but of course 37% of the snaps to 56% of the snaps. And then also Kenneth Walker leads the league in rushing success rate and is second in PFF rush grade, looking really good. What you're hoping for, and here's the issue. When you drafted Kenneth Walker in the third round, I was assuming that Kenneth Walker was the RB1 in this offense. You were also assuming that he fit really well with Kubiak. One of these things is true. He fits really well with Kubiak. He is built for this offense, but the role of RB1 over Charbonnet was not as much as a done deal as we assumed. So now we need Kenneth Walker, similar to these other rookies, right? It's not that Kenneth Walker's a rookie, but we're hoping in the same way that an RJ Harvey or Trevion Henderson, or the way that Scatabo just did in terms of this backfield takeover, and like we've seen even with Chase Brown last year, is these things happen in the NFL, but it does take some time. If this continues to happen, right, where in 27 attempts for 57 yards and then 23 attempts for 125, they're not going to just completely still go to Zach Charbonnet when Kenneth Walker's been an absolute stud. So at this point, Walker gets a little bit of an upgrade to like back-end RB2 you feel good about, but the usage still isn't great. But again, him playing well is going to earn him more opportunity. So there's a bit of a dichotomy there, but this is overall a very big positive for Kenneth Walker moving forward, and you hope that he just completely takes over this backfield by week 6, 7, 8, and is an absolute monster. Then we'll talk about the Rams backfield, which, not to pat ourselves on the back, right? We took a couple L's. We talked about Travis Hunter at the top. We just talked about Kenneth Walker, but this is one that I was actually I was fading Kenneth Walker this offseason with the idea that Blake Corum or Jarquez Hunter would be a real factor in this offense. It's kind of how Les Snead and Sean McVay has talked about this running back room the entire offseason. And then in week 1, they say, screw all that, Kyron's our bell cow. But then Kyron Williams here finally gets moved from an 81.7% snap rate to a 70% snap rate. Sean McVay said on that split today that this is much more in alignment with how he wants the Rams backfield to look. And then Ryan Heath also says here that Kyron not only loses his snap share, and Sean McVay then kind of doubles down on this usage, but he even split carries with Blake Corum inside the 20-yard line 3-3, with Corum nabbing the touchdown and the only carry inside of the 5-yard line, which is huge. That is, Kyron Williams has built RB1 finishes out of 100% of the red zone touches, 100% of the goal line carries, and if that's no longer there, he gets a downgrade to like a volume-dependent RB2 as a pretty rough third-round pick at this point. So I will say it's only week 2. We now have 2 different data points of split backfield and bell cow. We'll see what happens in week 3 moving forward. And then our third backfield we're going to talk about here is Arizona. I wasn't expecting this, where Trey Benson has fully carved out a role. Dwayne McFarland highlights here that Trey Benson is the primary passing down back. 55% of the routes is huge, 24% target share, 100% of the 2-minute drill snaps. And this is an even 50-50 split, where last year, weeks 1 through 15, before James Conner got banged up, this was a 65% of the snaps to James Conner, and then 35% kind of gets divvied up between whether it's Trey Benson, Amari DiMercato, Michael Carter, etc. But if James Conner is going to go from 65% of the snaps to 50%, things get a little spooky. He goes from a high-end RB2 to a back-end RB2, and kind of a shaky start in any given week, where this is a really good matchup versus the Panthers, and all he could squeeze out is 12.2 PPR points for you. And I think he scored a touchdown as well. So it's rough. I would say downgrade for James Conner, and Trey Benson becomes one of the more valuable bell cows in the league, because this was the big holdup, was if James Conner got hurt, kind of similar to a Braylon Allen or a Ray Davis with Ty Johnson and Isaiah Davis, that if James Conner was to go down, it would be Trey Benson alongside an Amari DiMercato or type satellite back, sort of splitting work. But if Trey Benson is already the satellite back right now, if James Conner was to go down, Trey Benson would be the 3-down bell cow on the Cardinals and be a RB1 if that was to ever happen. So Trey Benson gets a pretty big upgrade because now he has standalone value, and now if James Conner goes down, he is a legitimate league winner as a handcuff. Then our 6th takeaway, Indiana Jones. I cannot believe it. This Daniel Jones Colts team is good. Through 2 weeks, we look at the EPA per play. This is offensive efficiency per play. It's all of the usual suspects, right? You have the Chargers. Well, the Chargers kind of like a one-game, I wouldn't say fluke, but let's see it again tonight. But Chargers, Bills, Ravens, Colts. And then, of course, Packers, Lions, Cowboys, Rams, Buccaneers, 49ers. All of your usual suspects in the top 10. These are what have been the best offenses in the NFL for the last 2 seasons or 3 seasons. And you got the Colts in there. It's just amazing, despite tough matchups too. Like the, of course, Miami, not a great matchup, of course, but the Broncos, tough matchup. But I think there's a decent conversation to be had, and it's kind of why, if you want to go into another kind of tangent here of why, if you're going to draft, this is something that's actually kind of funny to point out, but if you're going to be the guy in your draft room that takes the first kicker or the first defense, it should always be the first kicker. It's easy to say this right now in week 2, but if you have the option between Brandon Aubrey or the Denver defense, it's always Brandon Aubrey. Brandon Aubrey will always be good. Kickers stick way more year over year, whereas defense is like the defense you think is going to be amazing. It's tough to have a top-end defense year in and year out. We'll see what happens with the Broncos, right? Like, I'm not saying the Broncos are bad, but being the undisputed number 1 defense for a long time is tough. And I say that from experience, right? Like, the Jets had one of the best defenses in 2023, and then last year their defense sucked. We saw it with the the Saxonville Jaguars with Jalen Ramsey and AJ Bouye and Calais Campbell. Who else do they even have? Is that Yannick Ngakoue, Miles Jack? They had dogs on that team. Telvin Smith, something like that too. They had dogs on that team, and they just evaporate. And it's just kind of how it works with defenses. Defenses year over year, it's really tough to maintain. Every defense has a very short span of time, unless if you're one of the true, like, Legion of Boom stuck around for a while. But we'll see. I'm not saying that the Broncos are over with. I'm just saying, like, maybe them being a set and forget defense in fantasy football is tough. It's tough for any defense to be that. Then we also have, with this Colts team, Jonathan Taylor has legitimate legendary upside right now. He is on pace for 2,000 rushing yards. He has 2.5. Do I have this number up here? But he's averaging like 2.5 yards or 2.5 receptions per game. Here it is. He's averaging 2.5 receptions per game, which would tie a career high, and then 38.5 receiving yards per game, which would be a career high. Now, of course, that's because on those 2.5 receptions per game, he has 5 catches at this point, one of them being a huge play. So that yards per game number is absolutely inflated, but if he can set career highs in receptions per game and receiving yards per game, he all of a sudden has like legitimate legendary upside, where right now he's playing like 95% of the snaps, excluding that Miami garbage time from last week. Like, he is an every down guy, something that you rarely see in the modern NFL right now. Really his biggest hurdle to being the RB1 overall, and I will say it's already a W that the guy you drafted to the 2-3 turn is probably a top 5 running back rest of season at worst. Like, I would have JT that probably wherever you have Derrick Henry, like right behind Derrick Henry as like RB5, RB6 rest of season, but his really only hurdle is Daniel Jones, where Daniel Jones, if he continues to take QB sneak, goal line touches away and goal line rushes away, that's where it gets tough. Where Jonathan Taylor, despite the Colts scoring all these points, has just 1 touchdown through 2 weeks. That's his biggest holdup right now. But if he's going to be on pace for 2,000 rushing yards and then also set career highs in receptions and receiving yards, he's going to be a pretty massive hit this year, Jonathan Taylor, especially in this offensive environment where when you were drafting him, you were projecting like a bottom 10 offense, to be honest. And then we'll also talk about Josh Downs. This is the tough one. Oh, it sucks so much in a competitive game script. So like last week, you could have said, okay, well, the Miami Dolphins, the game got out of hand. They're not going to run Josh Downs for a lot of routes. This is from PFF. You have Alec Pierce, 34 routes, Pittman, 32, and then 23 just not going to cut it. I know he leads the team in targets, right? He gets 8 targets on 23 routes. It's absurd, and it speaks to how talented Josh Downs is. That's what he does. He gets open, he commands targets. He's efficient on those targets. But 23 routes just isn't going to cut it. So he is a boom-bust flex play that you're hoping on 23 routes can give you 8 targets, and he gives you 6 catches for 51 yards. That's not that efficient, but that's kind of what we're hoping for. Is he runs 60 to 70% of the snaps, he makes 1 big play, he scores a touchdown, and then all of a sudden your flex is looking pretty good. But outside of that, if it's not a I have no other choice, I have to flex Josh Downs situation, he should stay on your bench until further notice. And then I will point out on the other side of this game, we have the Broncos wide receivers. Troy Franklin, I'm sure we're going to cover him a ton in the waiver wire video, but he, of course, leads this receiving room in routes with 28, with targets with 9. He gives you 8 catches for 89 yards and a touchdown. Year 2 breakout candidate, attached to Bo Nix like they were in college. Really big deal. What I will say is just like pump the brakes ever so slightly is that this is Sean Payton and he's a troll. We saw Marvin Mims be used in this exact role in the preseason. Regular season happens and Marvin Mims is relegated to 13 of the routes. Less snaps than Trent Sherfield, which is just nuts. Then you also have Pat Bryant, who is not running enough routes to be in the rookie receiver report, but someone who could take some of those routes away from Troy Franklin. So I'm just saying, like, don't get carried away. Let's see this for a few weeks of sustainable route participation. I will say as well, Evan Ingram, brutal. 18 routes of 33 pass plays is not going to cut it for Evan Ingram. He is a tough start moving forward. Only 2 targets in this game. Then our 7th takeaway is the Brock Purdy-less 49ers. I just figured I would cover them. Of course, the Saints aren't a great defense, but Mac Jones giving you 280 passing yards and 3 passing touchdowns is amazing. McCaffrey, even without Purdy, is still the RB1 in any given week that you're doing like weekly rankings for just based off of volume. 13 carries, 55 yards. He gives you 6 catches, 52 yards, and a touchdown. Just amazing all around. 20 opportunities there. Of course, he gets home with a touchdown. Then you have the receivers as well. Jawan Jennings out-targets Ricky Pearsall. Jennings gives you 5 for 89 and a touchdown. Pearsall 4 for 56, which isn't bad, but this like massive Ricky Pearsall breakout is starting to flutter a little bit. It's starting to flutter just a little bit. We can look at this from Dwayne McFarland, where from his rookie season, his per-out metrics aren't great. And even just this season, 18% target share is okay. 17% targets per out run is not great. 46% of the air yards you'll take. 2.19 yards per out run you'll take. 12 PPR points per game, not great. So he's been efficient. He just hasn't really been a big target earner in this offense. We'll see if that changes. I'm not out on Ricky Pearsall, but I'm just saying maybe we have to temper expectations for a little bit here, where after week 1, I was almost ready to make him like a fringe wide receiver 2. Now with Brock Purdy out and Ricky Pearsall kind of stalling out a little bit, he's probably just more like a fine wide receiver 3/flex play. Then I'll also say, let's take some deep breaths on Mark Andrews here. Mark Andrews, not great, right? He gives you 3 targets, nothing to show for. We now have like pretty much 2 zeros in a row from Mark Andrews, but I'm not fully panicking. It's a bad game script against the Browns. They didn't really have to throw the ball or score. When they did throw the ball and score, it was all spread out. Like Tez Walker had like 2 targets and a touchdown. DeAndre Hopkins had 2 targets and a touchdown. Mark Andrews had the 3rd most targets. It was Zay Flowers, it was Rashad Bateman, then it was Mark Andrews. He actually ran more routes than he did last week with a 79% route share, tied for 10th on the week at tight end. That's actually really strong usage. We just need him to be a bigger focal point of the passing offense. He did drop a touchdown as well. I would say I'm about like a 6 to 7 out of 10 on the panic meter. It's not all the way done. It's not drop Mark Andrews season, but we're going to have to see something soon here. I will say these 2 defenses have been tough, though. The Bills and then the Browns, those are 2 good defenses. Let's give it 2 or so more games. The only like waiver tight ends I'd prefer over him at this point would have been Fannin and Juwan Johnson, but at this point, those guys are not available on waivers. Then our 9th takeaway, which to be honest should have been after the Ricky Pearsall stuff, is the Rome Odunze breakout season. Monster year 2 step forward for this guy. He's completely leapfrogged DJ Moore. It's Odunze over DJ Moore in weekly rankings, rest of season rankings, dynasty rankings, any rankings. It is Rome Odunze as the number 1 wide receiver. Caleb Williams hasn't even been great. Caleb Williams has the 20th most passing yards in the NFL at this point, and Rome Odunze through 2 games, 23.8 points per game, 96% of the routes, 30% target share, 42% of the air yards, 2.06 yards per out run. He is a wide receiver 2 moving forward. This is everything we could have dreamed of when it came to Rome Odunze. And then on the other side of this game, which actually not the other side of this game, actually yes, it was the other side of this game, is not so much even talking about the Lions, but the Packers defense. The Lions get pretty much shut out by the Packers defense. Thursday night happens. Washington gets shut out by the Packers defense. The Packers defense is what we thought maybe the Broncos defense would be, where any team that plays them, any running back, any wide receiver, they get downgrades. This defense is too good. On top of Micah Parsons, they have the linebackers and Edgerrin Cooper and Quay Walker and Lucas Van Ness and Devontae Wyatt's a dog and Xavier McKinney's a dog. The whole defense is insane. The defensive coordinator who came from, I think, Boston College is really good too. So that is my lesson learned. The Lions drop a 50-plus piece in this game. Any down game we see against the Packers moving forward, I'm not panicking. Like Bill Krosky-Merritt, if there's a buy window here because he didn't produce against the Packers, I am all over it. Then our 10th takeaway, and we have 11 in this video, I'll be honest. We have the Eagles passing offense. Now, this is what I want to show you guys, okay? Before you freak out, I get it. 119 passing yards per game for the Eagles right now is brutal. It's behind only the Tennessee Titans. But they played the Chargers and the Chiefs, two really good defenses. And also, this is A.J. Brown's career numbers. In 2022, he had over 80 receiving yards per game. 2023, 85-plus receiving yards per game. 2024, 80-plus receiving yards per game. He gets to 80-plus receiving yards per game every single year he's been on the Eagles, and that is 3 different years with 3 different offensive coordinators. He did it with Shane Steichen. He did it with Brian Johnson. He did it with Kellen Moore. Now they have a new offensive coordinator, I believe Patullo, and I'm sure they're going to figure it out here. Like, we now have a 3-year sample of really both A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. A.J. Brown finishing as a top 12 point per game wide receiver. Devontae Smith finishing as a top 24 point per game wide receiver in 3 years of Jalen Hurts and a new offensive coordinator. It's going to start a little bit slow, but I think over an entire season, it's going to be fine. I'm really not worried about A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Is it frustrating? Does it suck to put them in your lineup and maybe you lose because they give you a goose egg or not what you're hoping for? Yes, but we've seen this exact scenario play out with the Eagles. It's what happens. Are there going to be some really ugly duds because they run the ball and they play good defense? Yes, but we've also seen that over a 17-game sample, both Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown get home every single year, same quarterback, new offensive coordinator, and they do it just fine. So I'm really not there yet. And then our last takeaway, some Sunday Night Football thoughts, and honestly, similar idea here. We have a 4-year sample of the Vikings with Kevin O'Connell. He is ranked 7th, 10th, and 12th in total yards. He's currently at the 31st most yards. I have to believe somebody that has put the ship together with duct tape of course, Kirk Cousins is good, but Nick Mullins, Sam Darnold, Josh Dobbs, anyone else that he's had to play in a game before, and still every year this is a top 12 offense in terms of points, or in terms of yards, I mean. They always put up yards. They're always an efficient offense, and I just think it's going to take time for J.J. McCarthy to settle in. And then I'll also say relax on Drake London. He comes out with only 4 targets and a 19% target share in this game, but remember, he was coming off of injury. His availability was up in the air in this game. He plays. I think they used him more as a decoy in this game, and it was his lowest target total in 4 games prior with Michael Penix, where his lowest target total before this was 8. So this is not the new norm. Drake London is not dead. I just think it was a bit of a decoy game. I think moving forward, Drake London will be just fine. Now, that is going to do it for us today. That is our top 11 takeaways from Week 2 as we head to Week 3 of the fantasy football season. As always, this video is sponsored by Underdog. If you want to hop in there, check out the Pick'em lobby, check out their drafts, all of that good stuff. Use promo code RON when you sign up and play $5. They will hook you up with $50 in bonus funds on the app. All you got to do is use the link in the description or the comment section down below to get in on the fun with Underdog. But if you can support there, just leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you guys in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, oh, oh.